the things that you find worth doing are almost always associated with an increase in responsibility. Because if you think about the people you admire, for example, you spontaneously admire people, and that's a manifestation of the instinct to imitate. Again, people are very imitative. You don't admire people who don't take care of themselves. Like, unless there's something wrong with you, you at least want an admirable person to be accountable for themselves. And then if they've got something left over so they can be accountable for their family, well, then that's a net plus, obviously. That's someone you think is solid. And then maybe they take care of some more people. They have a business, or they're involved in the community in some positive way. You see, well, that's a person whose pattern of being is worth imitating. And that's all associated with responsibility. And it's so interesting because it's as if everybody kind of knows this, but that it hasn't crystallized. It's like, well, you should be responsible because that's what a good citizen is. It's not, no, you should be responsible because you need to have a deep meaning in your life to offset the suffering so you don't get bitter. And the way you do that is to bear a heavy load, to get yourself in check for you now and for you in the future, and then to do the same for your family and your community, and that there's real nobility in that, and there's real meaning. And more, the other thing that I've been suggesting to people, and I also believe this, is that, and I think that the guys that have come to talk to me, especially the ones that have had real rough lives, they really understand this. If you don't get your act together and you let yourself slide, then what kind of moves in to take the place of what you could have been is something that's really not good at all. So it's not only that if you're living like a dissolute life, that you're not aiming at anything positive, and so you don't have any real meaning, and you're subsumed by anxiety and all of that and hopelessness, but something kind of hellish moves in there too to occupy that place, and so then you end up making things worse. And when, one of the things I learned about studying totalitarian systems, whether they were on the right or the left, was that part of the reason that the totalitarian horrors of the 20th century manifested themselves was because average people didn't take on the proper responsibility. They shut their eyes when their eyes should have been open, even though they knew it. And they did and said things they knew they shouldn't have done and said. And that was what supported those horrible systems. So, if you don't get your act together, then you leave a little space for hell. And I really believe that.
Don't you think when things are happening, like something like Nazi Germany, I would imagine that during that time, the people that were not in support of it felt helpless. Whether you're in Germany, you're a part of this country is turning towards this horrible situation where Jewish people are being put on trains. The people that didn't speak out in that, I don't necessarily know if it's a lack of discipline or just complete fear and paralysis
it's a fear for sure. I mean,
knowledge of how to deal with it or what
disbelief
to do, and
too,
wanting to protect your family as well, so not wanting to step out of line.
Absolutely. That's the thing. The problem is that if you're going to forestall that sort of thing, you have to do it early. Because the longer you wait, the higher the price you pay for it.
But isn't it it's hard to take that jump early because you're not exactly sure where it's going?
That's true. And you're also likely to be jumped on.
Yes.
I mean, you can see that happening in our own culture. You make a mistake on Twitter or even something that isn't a mistake, and you can pay what feels to be a pretty high price.
Right.
Now, whether it is a high price or not is hard to tell because Twitter is so weirdly fictional. It's so hard to get a grasp on exactly what's going on.
Well, it's also your comprehension of what is your emotional reaction to people that you don't know being mean to you. Like, this is like, what is that price?
Well,
and some people want to dismiss that as being just nothing. It's not that big a deal, but it is a big deal. It causes people to commit suicide. I mean, it has, absolutely. Bullying online has caused many people to commit suicide.
Well, the thing is, the weird thing about that online communication is that, like, I find that I tend to react to a negative Twitter comment as if it's someone sitting across from me talking to me that I know. Mm-hmm. Now, it's not, and I don't even know if the person is real, because the accounts are often anonymous, right? So that person isn't really real. But your emotional response is still, someone's gone out of their way to be harshly critical to you.
Right.
And that doesn't happen that often in your day-to-day life. And so, if you're a reasonable person, you're very sensitive to criticism,
right,
because it's rare and because you might be wrong, especially if there's a lot of people criticizing you, because you kind of have to be psychopathic in order just to brush that off. It's like, 100 people think I'm wrong, there's nothing to that. It's like, if it's 100 people out of 100 million, but you can't tell on Twitter,
Right.
then it's irrelevant. But if it's a mob of 100 people that show up outside your house, which is quite kind of what Twitter feels like, then you think, well, God, I must have done something wrong, because otherwise why would all these people be here?
Right.
And I think that's why so many people are driven to apologize, when they do something on Twitter or do something and then the Twitter mobs go after them. They think, oh God, I must have done something wrong. I should do some soul searching. And so some of that's not even fear. It's more like it's in a sense it's a morality that's misplaced because of our inability to calibrate the social messaging.